Hello. Okay, it's that time of the year again. We're about to enter 2025 and it's that time to share with you all my top 10 favourite movies of 2024. The movies that really did mean something to me. And I just want to get this out the way with first. This list isn't made up of movies that I felt or thought are the best made movies of the year, the perfect movies of the year, or, the technically superior movies of the year. It's not one of those lists. This is a personal list of movies that really did mean something to me, that touched me in a way that was, that was emotionally engaging, that I was able to get emotionally wrapped up into their stories on a personal level, that affected me on a personal level, and movies that I just found to be very fun, entertaining, and just sucked me into their worlds for however many hours it was. These are my personal favourites, and they're going to mean something perhaps different to many other people, but for me, these are the ones that really sort of stayed with me long after the credits rolled, and are movies that I just found myself admiring, wherever it be what they were attempting with its story, with its characters, or the themes that they were exploring. And not everyone is going to agree with my personal top 10 favourites of the year, but that's part of the fun of all of this. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing with you all my top 10 favourites. But first, I really want to mention or go through a very long list here of movies that at some point in the year were actually on this list. Almost every movie that I'm about to mention within my honourable mentions were or would have been in my list at one point. But I'm just going to skim through them all, because these are also movies that I really admired for whatever, for different reasons. So my honourable mentions are Cuckoo, Wicked, Terrifier 3, Wild Robot, Transformers 1, Heretic, Joker Folie 2, Strange Darling, Smile 2, Boy Kills World, Immaculate, Civil War, Spaceman, A Quiet Place Day 1, Dune Part 2, The Iron Claw, The First Omen, Furiosa, A Mad Max Saga, and Poor Things. All of these movies, I mean, even some of them at first, I really didn't know what to make of them. Joker Folie 2 is a good example there, and some of you might be surprised at that, to be one of my favourites of the year, or even one that I just liked and enjoyed, and it is. So yeah, enough rambling on from me, let's jump straight into it. So in at number 10, it's Alien Romulus. This is a movie, that I had issues with it. It had flaws. The way the narrative would play out, especially during the second act and going into the third act, and sort of the focus on its characters' journeys and how that played into the narrative, it didn't quite work in the way that was as effective perhaps as the sort of the human stories that we got in those original movies. But what they did achieve here was, as a lifelong Alien fan, was take me back home. And what I mean by that is, I felt like a kid again watching those original movies and just being in awe at how it was brought to life. How this very dirty, grimy, gritty world was brought to life in a way that felt authentic. You could feel the passion behind the scenes. You could just tell that Fede Alvarez is a fan of these movies, and it just didn't feel, or did end up feeling, like a pale imitation or just a copy and paste. It felt authentic. And even though I had those issues with its narrative and sort of how the characters' journeys would play out, they were very minor for me, because this was a movie that immersed me within its world, and I just felt like for the first time in a very, very long time that I was in an Alien movie. That opening scene, by the way, is one of my favourite scenes in the entire movie, and it gave me chills. It's been a long time since an Alien movie has given me chills. It's not perfect like a lot of movies in this list, but I had a hell of a good time with it, and I was mesmerised by the entire experience and in awe at how they brought the world to life, with practical effects. It just looked incredible, and I had a hell of a good time with it, and that is why Alien Romulus is number 10 for me. And in at number 9 is Late Night with the Devil. I had so much fun with this movie. It was like a roller coaster ride. You witness sort of the events of this late night TV talk show sort of descend into chaos due to this demonic entity. And it's crazy. It's bonkers. But it's incredibly fun. You've got David Dastmalchian as this TV host, and he is absolutely incredible. And just how sort of this story and this experience is constructed, and just how the momentum builds is just beautifully done. Even tonally, like I said, it's a little bit bonkers and crazy, and it really goes there towards the end during the third act. But I always remain totally immersed and engrossed and mesmerized by what was happening. This movie was just so much fun. You've got sort of traditional, old-fashioned sort of style of filmmaking on display as well in regards to practical effects and lighting. I mean, they capture sort of that kind of 70s aesthetic beautifully here. It also explores these kind of very dark human themes within the story, and it's handled in a very smart way. And again, it sort of works with the tone that they're going for with this movie. I highly recommend Late Night with the Devil. It's a hell of a lot of fun, and it's in at number 9 for me. And then at number 8 is a movie that really took me by surprise, just because I wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did, but I absolutely loved this experience. That is Challengers. You know, yes, it's got quite a basic premise. On surface level, it's quite basic, but it's one that explores much deeper and human themes in a way that I found it to be incredibly immersive and engaging. So much is told throughout this movie within the performances and how the movie is told from a visual perspective, as well as it being accompanied by this beautiful, thumping and pulsating synth score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. It was such a fun thrill ride that wraps you up within his character's emotions and desires. And I find tennis to be quite a boring sport to sort of watch. But what Luca Guadagnino does here, the director, and apologies if I pronounced that name incorrectly there, but what he manages to do with the moments where you're watching this tennis match play out is just incredibly fun. I have never been so thrilled in my life actually watching a tennis match. But again, it's because of sort of how it plays a part into these characters' journeys and sort of what it is that they are feeling emotionally, and just as a result, you get this big tennis match in the third act, and it is a fucking thrill ride. It's a roller coaster ride, and along with that thumping, pulsating score, it's incredible. Yeah, it's such a sort of immersive and engrossing experience. I highly recommend Challengers. Again, it's not going to be one of those movies for everyone, but I found it to be incredibly mesmerizing and thrilling, and also emotionally challenging. I felt like the movie challenges you, the viewer, as well, which I found to be incredibly fun. So yeah, Challengers is in at number 8 for me. And in at number 7 is Monkey Man, starring, written and directed by Dev Patel. This is Dev Patel's directorial debut, and let me tell you something. Dev Patel directs the fuck out of this movie. It was incredibly fun. It's emotionally engaging. You get swallowed up within sort of the thrill and sort of that emotional aspect of the character's journey. It's a good old-fashioned revenge story done right. It's incredibly effective, and it's one of those movies that really took me back to being a kid again, watching those old classic revenge movies from the 70s, the 80s, and it does it in a way that's beautifully crafted and beautifully brought to life, that it feels real. You know, Dev Patel does a beautiful job at bringing this dark, dirty, gritty world to life. This is how you craft a revenge film, a revenge story. In many ways, it's also a love letter to those movies, those classic sort of 70s, 80s, 90s action revenge movies that you may have grown up with watching. You know, you've got that kind of old-fashioned traditional style of filmmaking on display as well, where you've got stunts actually happening within the frame. It's an incredibly effective revenge story as a result. It's a hell of a lot of fun. One of the best action movies of the year. I highly recommend it, and that is Monkey Man. It's in at number 7 for me. And in at number 6 is The Holdovers, a movie that we didn't get until January this year. It's one of those movies that came out in the States, I think it was October, and for some reason we didn't get it until January. So for a lot of people this is a 2023 film, but for me in UK it's a 2024 film, and I absolutely loved it. It's a film, it's a story full of warmth, heart, you got great performances, the humour works. It's a beautifully told story that explores these very real human emotions and themes of sort of growing up, evolving, and just sort of finding yourself, reflection, and yeah, it's a beautifully made story. It's a story that just felt very real, due to how it was brought to life with that kind of very sort of traditional aesthetic to it in regards to how it was shot. Paul Giamatti is incredible here. He does a really good job at sort of balancing sort of the more serious emotional aspect of the character's journey along with the humour in a way that just felt very real and relatable. But the standout for me here was Divine Joy Randolph. She is incredible, and there's a moment within this movie that is so emotionally powerful due to her performance within this moment. It feels incredibly raw. It felt very real. And, you know, it's a movie, it's also a feel-good movie. Coming out to this film, I felt good. Even though emotionally it sort of pulls you through, sort of drags you through the ringer in a good way. It is a movie that speaks a lot to you on an emotional level. It did to me anyway. This is a movie that spoke very loud, and I watched it in a setting. It was actually at an Everyman Cinema, and it was the perfect setting to watch this movie. I think for me personally, it's up there with other Christmas movies like It's a Wonderful Life. That's how good I felt The Holdovers was. So yeah, I highly recommend it, and The Holdovers is in at number 6 for me. And in at number 5 is Long Legs. Long Legs, like a lot of other movies in this list, is one of those films that sort of came along and knocked a lot of other movies that were in this list out. Films like Dune Part 2 that were in this list for an awful long time. You know, Dune Part 2 is a technical marvel. It's a movie that took me back to being a kid again, watching films like A New Hope. But there was just something about Long Legs and what they managed to achieve with Long Legs that kind of really sort of stayed with me in a way that was much more powerful. You know, Long Legs beautifully captures the aesthetic and vibe of movies like Silence of the Lambs, but also sort of implements or adds the supernatural aspect to its story that works beautifully, as well as exploring sort of these very kind of unnerving, disturbing themes around sort of what these characters are going through. And that supernatural element of the story works due to how this story is crafted. It always has its sort of foot remained sort of rooted firmly into the ground. And it's as a result of this, you know, again, you know, Seven, it has a very Seven sort of vibe about it, that kind of dirty grittiness. And that's what allows this film to sort of remain grounded. So when that supernatural element does weave its way into the story, it never sort of throws you out. It didn't for me anyway. And you've got Nicolas Cage, who gives a fucking fantastic performance here. A very unnerving performance. He is incredible within this movie at bringing this kind of very sort of creepy character to life. It's Nicolas Cage restrained. He's sort of like, you know, you've still got those kind of classic Nicolas cage mannerisms in his performance. That kind of very eccentric sort of aspect to his performance is there, but he balances it out beautifully to the point where it doesn't become too silly or just too over the top. Longlegs was a mesmerizing experience to sit through. It's an unnerving one, it's a disturbing one, and I was just in awe at what they were able to achieve sort of with those different elements of the story, and that is why Longlegs is in at number 5 for me. In at number 4 is another Luca Guadagnino movie, and that is Quia. This film at first was perhaps a little jarring in sort of how the experience played out, and I acknowledge that in my review, but it's one of those movies that stayed with me long after the credits rolled. I found the entire experience of Quia to be emotionally powerful. This was a movie that spoke to me on a personal level, and through a visual perspective, just like with Challengers, it says so much. And again, I feel like Quia is going to be one of those movies that's not going to speak to everyone in the same way, but for me, it just sucked me into this sort of otherworldly kind of almost like a fantasy-like setting, and I was totally engrossed throughout the entire duration. I was emotionally involved and wrapped up within these characters' journeys. Daniel Craig is amazing here. He brings this character to life in a way that feels very natural. It feels real. The emotions are raw. There's this one moment, this one simple shot, and you've got New Order's Leave Me Alone playing in the background. It's one of my favourite moments in the film, and it's like about a minute long, about 1 minute, 2 minutes long, of a camera just sort of focusing in on Daniel Craig there, and he is saying so much through his performance. And yeah, it's an emotionally powerful movie for me, and it's one that I thought was brought to life beautifully from a visual perspective. Again, like a lot of other movies on this list, I don't think it's perfect, but it's one that sort of really spoke to me in a way that was quite powerful, and I just admired what Luca was doing in sort of how he was crafting the story and how he was bringing it to life, along with the stellar performances from the cast. Daniel Craig here is beautiful. You know, for me, Quia is an emotionally draining experience, but in a good way, because it evokes all the right emotions that I feel the story is designed to evoke. And it's all done beautifully, it's all captured beautifully through these moments with these characters, specifically Daniel Craig's and this person that he falls in love with, Eugene. And you'll get sort of these brief moments peppered throughout where it'll just be like him trying to do his belt up or attempting to do Eugene's belt up, and they are moments that sort of on surface level will just be like, oh, okay. But it's also saying so much through how these performances are brought to life within these moments. Like, there are moments that made me feel like I was, I felt embarrassed for the character. There are moments that made me cringe, but I mean that in a good way, because that is what I felt like these moments were designed to do. They are to evoke those, those sort of emotions to a point where you feel like you're there with these characters, witnessing these events unfold, and it feels real, it feels natural. So yeah, Quia is in at number 4 for me. And in at number 3 is The Substance, a body horror directed by Coralie Fudger. I think that's how you pronounce her name, apologies if it's incorrect. This was an incredible experience. It's a movie, like with many others in this list, have that kind of very otherworldly vibe to it. To me, it came across very kind of dark, fairy tale-like, almost like a Brothers Grimm story. And I just felt like how they infused that with what are very real human themes and emotions. For example, not just women, but men as well, within sort of the show business, when it comes to Hollywood and just being cast aside. It's an incredibly effective experience as a result. This is a very tragic story that's beautifully brought to life, not just in how it's crafted by its director, but by also the performance by Demi Moore. Demi Moore in this movie is fantastic. It feels natural, it feels real, you feel the pain that the character is going through. She is fucking incredible, and she it's through her performance that sort of really sells that kind of the emotional aspect of its story. But at the same time, I mean, even though you've got that kind of otherworldly, dark fairy tale vibe to it, I felt it always remains very grounded within reality due to what they are exploring with its themes. The Substance for me is an incredible experience. I absolutely loved it. And so yeah, I highly recommend The Substance, and The Substance is in at number 3 for me. And in at number 2, and I feel like this one is going to surprise quite a lot of people, but I just fucking loved it due to sort of how it kind of just swallows you up within the story and just puts you through a fucking sort of emotionally draining a thrill ride. And that is Blink Twice, directed by Zoe Kravitz, the second movie in this list to be a directorial debut. And like Dev Patel with Monkey Man, Zoe Kravitz directs the fuck out of this movie. It's a movie that explores very disturbing and real themes, and it's done in a way that is incredibly smart. Like, this film literally had me on the edge. It gave me chills. It's giving me chills just talking about it, and it's meticulously crafted in a way that just fills you with dread and horror. The way this movie is crafted is incredible, with how the narrative plays out and how the revelations come to light. It is done in a way that just left me gobsmacked and in awe at what it was that they were achieving here with bringing this story to life. Like I said, it's a very disturbing story. It's not going to be for everyone, and I think there are people who are going to find it hard to watch due to what they're dealing with its subject matter. But how it's told within this story was just incredible. It was one of the most chilling, unnerving, disturbing experiences of the year, but it did everything that a film should do, and it's put you on an experience no matter what sort of it is that they're sort of dealing with in regards to its story. And I felt like it did it in a way that was incredibly smart. As a directorial debut, Zoe Kravitz knocks it out of the fucking park. I absolutely love Blink Twice. It's one hell of an experience, but like I said, it's not going to be for everyone. But it's a movie that evokes all the right emotions, and it just does it in a way that, like I said, it puts you through the ringer emotionally. It was a hell of an experience, and so yeah, Blink Twice is in at number 2 for me. And in at number 1 is a movie that, since I first watched it at the beginning of the year, has remained in this list at number 1 throughout the entire year. It's nothing of coming its way to knock it off that number 1 spot. This is a movie that not only stayed with me long after the credits rolled, but stayed with me throughout the entire year due to what it was that I experienced and how the story played out. And that is All of Us Strangers. Now, this movie in many ways is quite similar to Quia. It's also a film that also has a kind of otherworldly vibe to it, but it works beautifully with what it is that they're exploring with its story and its themes. Another story that's quite tragic, that's emotionally powerful, and it spoke to me in a way that I could relate to it, and it is beautifully crafted. Just sort of the details in sort of the performances from Paul Mescal and Andrew Scott are just beautiful, but again, it's within those performances that say so much, and it's not until you reflect on the film that you kind of realize as well, like, what was happening in certain moments with these characters, and as a result, it just gives you a chill. All of Us Strangers was an incredibly effective and powerful experience. Again, I think it's one of those movies that's sort of going to touch people in different ways or speak to people in different ways. Not everyone is going to feel the same way that I did, like every other film in this list, but All of Us Strangers was a beautifully crafted story with very real and natural performances from our two main actors, Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal. They are absolutely beautiful in this movie. All of Us Strangers for me is a truly haunting experience in many ways. Like, the fact that this film stayed with me for so long, that it emotionally impacted me and affected me for so long. And it's all done beautifully through how the story is constructed, how the narrative plays out, to the beautifully haunting score that I just had to get on vinyl. It's an incredibly haunting, tragic experience that's meticulously crafted in a way that is incredibly effective and emotionally raw and powerful. All of Us Strangers is in at number 1 for me. So yeah, almost all of these movies in this list I had sort of minor issues with. I had flaws. I don't think they're perfect, but they're also experiences that put me on an actual experience where I went through all these different kinds of types of emotions, and I come out at the other end going, wow, as if I'd literally just been put onto a roller coaster, or I'd actually been there with these characters going on this journey with them. And that's why these movies are in my list, my top 10 favourites of 2024. So yeah, enough rambling. What do you guys think? What are your favourite movies of the year? Are there any movies in this list that you agree with or disagree? Then let me know in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future movie reviews and just general movie talk from a geek in Wales, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. It's been quite a busy period, and so I've not managed to grab a few releases that came out over the Christmas period. But my next movie review will be for one of my most anticipated movies of 2025. It's already out in the States, but for us in the UK, it's a 2025 movie, and that is Nosferatu. I am so excited for that film. I cannot wait. I'm a big fan of Robert Eggers, and so that would be my next cinema release review for the channel. But I also just want to say, before I sign out here, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of you that have connected to the channel over the year, whether it be liking, commenting, subscribing. It has meant an awful lot. Like, it will always overwhelm me that so many of you do want to follow just some random Welsh geek ramble on about film. But I absolutely love doing this. I've enjoyed it. This is my second year now, sort of really putting all my effort behind sort of doing this with this channel, sort of just sharing my love and passion for film with like-minded people. And I'm really looking forward to growing my channel into 2025, and I can't do that without you guys and your support. It just means an awful lot. So yeah, I hope you all have a fantastic new year, and I will be seeing you in the new year with my first movie review, and that's for Nosferatu. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'll be catching you guys soon.